If you've ever had IBS symptoms that come with bladder urgency, pelvic pain, or you just feel like your whole body is out of sync, you're not imagining it. The gut, the brain, and the bladder, plus the pelvic floor, they're all part of the same network. And if you don't understand how they influence each other, you'll never get full relief. Now, this is a monumental missing link in gut health that I want to unpack for you today. And it's especially important if your approach has always just been diet changes and it hasn't really helped your gut. My name is Joe Leech. I'm a qualified dietitian and I run the world's largest online gut health clinic. In fact, I've been teaching about gut health, the low FODMAP diet, SIBO, and all the rest right here on this YouTube channel since 2016, long before gut health was mainstream and even trendy. So allow me to give you a quick foundation so you understand what the gut-brain-bladder axis is and why it matters. So the gut-brain-bladder axis is this communication highway between your digestive system, your urinary system, and your nervous system. And it's all connected by neural pathways and chemical messengers. Now, at the center of this is the vagus nerve. It's the longest cranial nerve in the body, and it runs from your brainstem down to your gut, your bladder, and your reproductive organs. And it helps regulate digestion, inflammation, mood, even your immune system. But here's the issue. When you're under chronic stress or anxiety, your body flips into what we call fight or flight mode, and it activates the nervous system. That fight or flight response is helpful in short bursts, right? Like if you need to run from danger. But when this stress mode is always on, it causes muscles throughout the body to tense up, especially the pelvic floor. Now that constant pelvic floor tension creates issues for the gut and keeps the nervous system in hyper alert as well because it works both ways. Now, to show you exactly how this plays out in real life, I want to play you a clip from a live training I did with our Australian gut-directed therapist, Jay. Now, in it, she tells a story of a client who realized her gut symptoms were tied directly to bladder tension and anxiety, and then how we helped her break the cycle.
I'm gonna tell you what sort of highlighted this issue, because it was a client that brought it up when we had been doing nervous system support work together. So they were getting in tune with their body and what they were noticing. And she had a really great observation, which she was going through this period of anxiety. And yes, she noticed the flare up with the gut, but she also noticed in that period that she was having to urinate a lot. Okay. And she noticed that the bladder would get full. It would aggravate the gut, and it would feel like cramps. And then when she was done, it would be better again. So it was a really great observation because it highlights that intricate connection between the gut, the bladder, pelvic floor, and our nervous system, okay? And that can be referred to as the gut-brain-bladder axis. And it's not uncommon with clients that have disorders of the gut brain, especially during times of heightened anxiety. And as we know, that anxiety can come on out of anywhere when we're dealing with gut issues because we're more hypervigilant around food when we go out, things like that. So anxiety is generally higher in this cohort. So I just want to talk to what was happening there for that client. So if we're anxious, you can change that to stress, worry, whatever resonates with you. The body can enter that fight or flight mode. That activates our sympathetic nervous system, and that can tighten our muscles, including those in the pelvic floor. And then that increases sensitivity in both the gut and the bladder. So if you've got a full bladder, that can add pressure to an already sensitive pelvic area, and that can trigger cramp-like sensations in the gut. And then once you empty the bladder, that pressure or the discomfort can ease. Anxiety obviously increases our overall vigilance to our bodily sensations, making the symptoms like urgency, bloating, cramping feel even more intense. So when the anxiety subsided for this client, the nervous system went back to rest and digest. And that explains why the symptoms improved or reset.
So what Jay just described is a powerful reminder of how interconnected your gut, your bladder, and your nervous system really are. When the pelvic floor is tense from chronic stress or anxiety, it affects everything. digestion, elimination, even how your bladder and bowels feel day to day. So we need to start focusing on the process of moving you out of that fight or flight mode and into what we call rest and digest mode, because believe it or not, that is what's going to help heal pelvic floor dysfunction. Now, quick note, if this is hitting home and you're wondering if pelvic floor dysfunction or nervous system dysregulation is part of your symptoms, click the first link in the description to learn how we help you figure that out. And if you're just getting started and you want more clarity around FODMAPs and food triggers, I've added a link to our free FODMAP food list below as well. That's the second link in the description. Now that you've seen how tension in the pelvic floor can disrupt both your gut and bladder, we need to get more specific because not all pelvic floor issues look the same. Some people have muscles that are too tight, leading to cramps, urgency or constipation, and others have muscles that are too weak or uncoordinated, which can cause leaking, incomplete emptying, even prolapse. And then there are the folks who are stuck in the middle, right, with muscles that fire at the wrong time altogether. So Jay's about to walk you through the different types of pelvic floor dysfunction and how our vagus nerve and anxiety levels can influence this in real time.
Even if you can imagine, the term, oh, I'm going for a nervous wee. That is what we're talking about here, okay? So let's talk around why they're all connected. So what we've got here is pelvic floor tension. So anxiety can lead to that involuntary tightening of the pelvic floor muscles, which affects both the bladder and the gut. That can mimic gut cramps or increase sensations of fullness or discomfort. Then we've got that nervous system overlap, okay? The vagus nerve. For anyone that doesn't know, I'm a big nerd for the vagus nerve. This is the longest of 12 cranial nerves in our body. And when we're talking about the gut-brain connection, the vagus nerve is key for this, okay? It connects that back of the brainstem, goes into all of those internal organs, okay? So just for anyone that doesn't know that, that's the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve and pelvic nerves regulate both the gut and the bladder. So if you've got heightened anxiety, it can increase sensations from both of the organs. That gut bladder pressure that some people are experiencing, anatomically, the bladder and the lower intestine are really close together. So the pressure from one, like a full bladder, can aggravate the other one. Okay, so pelvic floor dysfunction is a condition where the muscles of the pelvic floor, which support the bladder, the bowel, uterus in women, prostate in men, where it's not functioning optimally. So it can mean that you have overactive muscles where they're too tight, they cause pain, urinary urgency, constipation. For some people that struggle more with constipated dominant IBS, can have this overlap, or painful intercourse. It's another thing that I see a lot in clients. It's something that I ask around, sexual health, and it's something that some clients have had to completely let go of because of this. Or you might have underactive muscles, they're too weak or uncoordinated, and that can lead to incontinence, prolapse, which someone's just mentioned here, or difficulty with bowel or bladder emptying. And then we have dysynergia, which is where the muscles contract when they should relax, and that's more common in constipation and IBS-C.
When the pelvic floor isn't functioning properly, whether it's too tight, too weak, or simply out of sync, it throws everything off. Think of your pelvic floor like the shock absorber in a car. Okay, it cushions and regulates movement, but when it's too stiff or too loose, every bump feels exaggerated. That tension sends false alarms to your brain, like urgency or pain, when nothing's actually wrong. And that's why we always say, if your gut symptoms haven't improved with diet alone, your pelvic floor might be the missing piece. We've talked about anxiety and stress, but now we need to talk about trauma. Not just trauma from a major accident or crisis, by the way, but the chronic, quieter forms too, like family or relationship stress, toxic work environments, years of people pleasing or emotional suppression. Jay is about to explain how even these, what we call little t traumas, can lead to dysregulated nervous systems and create protective tension in the pelvic floor. And you'll also learn why this kind of Unresolved stress can lead to inflammation in the bladder, disrupted hormone function, and a gut that's constantly on edge.
Stress, trauma, anxiety, generally will have an impact on what my clients are experiencing. So chronic stress and trauma can lead to protective pelvic floor tension. A lot of people will think when I'm mentioning trauma here that it needs to be what would typically be seen as trauma, going to war, a big crash, things like that. What the evidence is showing is that if you've gone through a period of little t traumas, these are things that can be happening day to day that can sometimes have more of an impact than a big one with that would lead to PTSD. Okay, what we're talking about when I talk about trauma, big T, little T, I'm talking about anything that you went through where you did not feel you had the capacity to deal with it at the time. Okay, nobody can define trauma for you. It is subjective. Okay, so if you found something traumatic, if you went through something where you didn't feel like you had the skill set to handle it at the time or the tools to handle it, that is trauma. Okay, and so when we have gone through periods of this over long periods of time, it could be bullying at school, it could be if we went through childhood trauma, if we've then gone through workplace stress, relationship difficulties, anything, okay? Anything that you went through that you feel like you didn't have the skill set to it, that is causing dysregulation in your body, okay? And that bracing of the body can be a response to that. And that is why I talk to a lot of people that are in a state of hyperarousal a lot, that sympathetic activation. So when the nervous system perceives threat, the body, especially the gut and the pelvic floor, tighten to protect it. Okay, so we can start to understand the science behind what's happening there. Then how that interacts, obviously, with everything. The gut microbiome is going to be affected. If you're dysregulated, your immune system is going to be affected. If you're dysregulated, that can lead to inflammation in the bladder, in the pelvic nerves when we're dysregulated. Okay. So when we are supporting our nervous system, when we're toning our vagus nerve, which is a big thing that I encourage clients to do and everyone in this program, what we're trying to do there is everything that stress and trauma causes in the body, we're trying to soften that. Okay, when we're bringing calmness back into our body, when we're regulating ourselves again, this is where we see changes in our immune system, in the inflammatory markers, in hormone function as well. Okay, so it's part and parcel with this area.
This is why we tell clients it's not just about what you eat, it's about how safe your body feels. When your body is always braced for danger, your gut and bladder can't relax. And healing starts when the nervous system is finally allowed to let go. If you've tried all the food eliminations and nothing sticks, this could very well be why. We combine the food guidance with the nervous system and pelvic floor support, and it makes all the difference for our clients. There's a link below in the description, the first link, to see how our program works. And if you're still figuring out your triggers, there's a free FODMAP food list there too. That's the second link in the description below. So how do you actually resolve all of this? Jay is about to walk you through some tools that help you regulate your nervous system, to relax the pelvic floor and to reconnect with your body. And this is where real progress happens. And by the way, one of these tips might sound strange at first, but trust me, it's something most people have been doing wrong their whole life.
Other things that you can lean into is practicing gut-directed relaxation and hypnotherapy. Okay, I know this is a bit of like a buzzword. I've been doing this, as I said, for 4.5 years with Joe, and even though he's being very modest there around that, Joe has always followed the evidence and the research first, and that's why he's got the team that he has, because whenever there's evidence for something or research for something, then he implements it. Okay, and so if you're working with someone like me, and it doesn't need to be me, obviously therapy can be so personalized, you might have rapport with someone already, but they might be, if they've got an awareness of the body, it is quite a niche area, but if they've got awareness around it, it can reduce that pelvic bracing and improve the gut bladder coordination. A big part of what I'm teaching you is to get in touch with your body. Okay, many of us are disconnected from our body, and most of the time that stress response or anxiety response is starting in the body first, just because of the way that vagus nerve signals. So a big part of my work with you is getting you to connect your brain and your body together again. Okay. That helps with nervous system downregulation, vagus nerve support. We're toning the vagus nerve. If your body feels safe, the pelvic floor won't need to guard as much. A big thing that I learned from dietitians is using a squatty potty or a footstool when you're on the toilet. Okay. That elevates your knees above your hips to relax the muscles and allow for easier evacuation. I have become such a nerd now that I won't go even camping without that. I've got a little fold up one. Okay. So it's like aligning the pipes in the body. So there's less strain and there's more flow. Breath work and diaphragmatic breathing can be something you engage in. It encourages full pelvic expansion and release on exhale. It's great for reducing subconscious clenching, which many of us are doing. Okay. A lot of the way that we hold our body is habitual. We've just gotten used to holding it a certain way. And so we're sort of needing to unlearn that. Okay. Think of your breath as a massage for the pelvic floor. For some of us, we're unlearning things as well. We've gotten used to associating the toilet with stress. And so I also say, you know, as ridiculous as it is, I'm like, reclaim that space. Okay. You know, bring music into the bathroom with you, have a pretty candle. If you're really struggling, I have an ice roller that I use to activate my vagus nerve on the neck. For some people that are experiencing urgency or constipation, I'm like, bring in that ice roller, just like relax, listen to some music, trying to take that pressure off, put the squatty potty there. We're trying to change that association. Okay. And that's part of what working with me and the dietitians can help with, because we can come up with a lot of different ways, but we can personalize it for you with things that might work for you. I have a client recently where he'll struggle getting in the car and he has to keep getting out because he thinks he needs the toilet. And so his homework last weekend was, when he was at home on the weekend relaxing, he had to just go sit in the car for 5 minutes and read a book, 5 minutes and have a coffee. But we were really working on changing that association between the brain responding to this is what happens when you get in the car and changing it. And after that weekend of doing that, he was able to go to the shopping center without running back in and out of the toilet. And he went to the shopping center that whole time without going to the toilet. And he's like, he cannot remember the last time in years that he's done that.
That last story Jay shared is a perfect example of how powerful these strategies can be when they're personalized. That kind of transformation doesn't happen from willpower or stricter diets. It happens when we retrain the nervous system to feel safe again. And one of the other tips Jay mentioned about raising your legs on a stool when you go to the toilet, it might seem silly, but it's actually one of the most overlooked things we see. Because humans have been around for however many tens of thousands of years, right? But sitting toilets only became common in Western countries about 150 years ago. So for nearly all of human history, we squatted to eliminate, which naturally positions the body to relax the pelvic floor and straighten the rectum for easier bowel movements. In fact, when I'm in Asia, I often still happen upon toilets that are just like a hole in the ground and you have to squat. And I'd be curious if you've ever experienced that. Let me know in the comments. Now, if you've ever felt stuck in fear or frustration, like your body's working against you, this next part is really going to hit home for you, because Jay's about to explain something that's at the heart of, I guess, why our program works so well, but it's that your brain isn't wired to keep you happy. It's wired to keep you safe. Okay, that means if you've had bad experiences, toilet urgency, public embarrassment, anxiety loops, your brain starts ringing alarm bells even when there's no actual real danger. So Jay's going to explain how we help clients rewire that response, to challenge those thoughts, and to retrain the nervous system to stop jumping to panic mode. This is how we move from short-term symptom control to actual long-term calm and confidence.
It's not going to be doing anything different if you have bladder urgency and gut and bowel urgency. What we need to do is we need to calm that visceral hypersensitivity. We need to calm that nervous system down, because if we're calming the gut, we're going to be in turn calming the bladder. Okay. If there is dysfunction there, obviously I'm going to suggest, you might want to try a pelvic floor physiotherapist. Most of my clients that I work with are obviously in conjunction with a dietitian, and they're very good at picking up and suggesting when someone needs to go for that assessment. So normally that's even being done before we work together. And I'm working more on that anxiety around that. Okay. So we're going to be doing relaxation techniques, nervous system support techniques. Is there trauma that was attached to it? We could work on trauma that was attached to it. If it is in regards to a dysregulated nervous system, I'm going to be teaching you ways to regulate that nervous system and then challenge the thoughts that come with that. And it's so personal, for some people, they're going to go with, catastrophizing, or they're going to be going with a fear response. The one thing I teach most clients, which I think is practical across the board, is remembering that the brain's job is to keep us safe, not happy. Okay. So when it is having a response like that, it is because it's had a bad experience. Okay. It's fearful of something. And I'm teaching you how to challenge that thinking and to start to try and rewire the brain so it knows that it doesn't need to be that hypervigilant anymore. Okay. And that's some work that we can do together.
That idea that your brain is trying to protect you is so important to understand. Like, you're not broken. You're not weak. You're just stuck in a loop, and your body never got the chance to unlearn it. But the good news is it can be unlearned. And when it is, the results speak for themselves. Fewer symptoms, less fear, and a gut that finally feels predictable and normal again. So if your IBS or bladder issues still haven't resolved with food changes alone, what we talked about today, that could be why. Your nervous system, the pelvic floor, past experiences, they're not separate from your gut health. They're all part of the same axis. Tap the first link below in the description of this video to learn how our team combines diet, gut-directed therapy, pelvic support, and trauma-informed care to rebuild a calm and resilient digestive system. And if you're not quite ready for personalized guidance yet, be sure to visit the second link in the description and get our free FODMAP list as your next step. It's genuinely been downloaded by well over 1 million people. Now, if food changes didn't solve your gut issues and you're not sure it's related to pelvic floor issues either, SIBO could be the missing piece for you. Now, in this next video, we break down how to tell the difference between IBS and SIBO, when to test, and why treating the wrong thing keeps you stuck.